Welcome to Five Big Questions. I'm Angela Morabito with Campus Reform. And today, Congressman Warren Davidson from Ohio is joining me to answer five big questions about his take on higher education. Congressman Davidson, thank you for being here.
Thanks for asking these questions. Nice to join you.
Well, it's my pleasure. Now, one of the things we're looking at in higher ed is the mismatch between what students are learning and what the job market demands. What do you believe needs to be done to fix this?
I think one of the most fundamental things is the way students pay for college. So if you look at the federal takeover of lending, there are no longer real underwriting standards. So people can go just as deeply into debt, regardless of the job prospects for their majors. So, to contrast to, a chemical engineering degree from MIT, probably going to be able to get a job, pay for the tuition. A medieval art degree from some state school, less likely to land a job that's going to pay off the same amount of student debt. And you can go just as deeply in debt for both majors and frankly at the same interest rate. So people aren't pricing that in when they start shopping for an education. So when they take on the debt, they should be saying, how am I going to pay for this?
Well, you're actually talking to someone who really likes medieval art, but knew better than to study it. So you're speaking my language. Do you believe that this change to underwriting would force colleges to make their content more relevant?
Well, certainly it would make them have conversations with their students, because for them to get funded, there would be there. I would hope, I was a history major. I would hope colleges still teach, liberal arts degrees, and it provides a lot of value. But, you might also say, where do I want to go to school? Do I really want to go to Notre Dame to be a social worker and rack up that much debt? Maybe I could go to Wright State University in Ohio and get that same degree for less, have less debt, and still do the same kind of work as a social worker. Or if you do want to go to the big expensive school, it makes you more motivated for scholarships, or at least aware of how am I going to repay it.
That's a big deal, that repayment. But something that I think gets lost in this conversation is that a four-year college is not the only way to the workforce. Apprenticeships are growing in this country to the tune of a 70% increase over the past 10 years. What do you make of that trend?
Yeah, so when you look at higher ed, part of the problem is it's universally the prescription. No matter what the student, no matter what they want to do, well, you need to go to college. That's been ingrained now for probably a couple generations at least. And even socially, people put a stigma on, oh, well, you didn't go to college. And, culturally, we have to end that. We should respect people that decide to be plumbers, electricians, brick masons. All these skilled trades require real mastery to do it well. And we appreciate it when it's done well. You look at the housing phenomenon. People are remodeling their houses at record numbers. The home builders are booked where you can't even get supply for housing. People want to make that big purchase and they want it to be done well. Someone has to build the houses. You go on throughout the economy, and lots of these jobs don't require college. Sure, you can do it with a college degree, but you frankly spent 4 years that you didn't work towards mastering whatever the trade is.
And to your point there, Congressman, there are plenty of people who need a college degree to get a job, but they don't need the college degree to actually do that job. So do you think that businesses and hiring practices have a role to play here when it comes to credential inflation?
Oh, absolutely. So for example, in 0809, I was in manufacturing, owned a group of manufacturing companies, and, a small company at that time. But as the economy started to recover, someone reached out to me and said, hey, my previous employer, where I had been recognized as an engineer, won't hire me back because I don't have a bachelor's degree. I'm like, are you kidding me? You already worked your way up from the shop floor to the office to be an engineer, great with CAD, run projects for the company. And I said, well, I'll hire you. So we started hiring all these engineers, and it really was great for our business. One of the fastest growth rates we had was when we were picking up these engineers who were the key to manage projects. In one case, we had a customer who literally had a degreed engineer with no experience who was now using our company to manage the projects because they could no longer do it in-house. So it really is a mismatch sometimes with corporate HR where they prescribe a degree instead of saying, what skills does the person need? And I think that's the right thing. When people post job offerings. What we found in our manufacturing sector and what we found talking to employers, look for the skills. You can always provide the training and education.
That skills component of education has so drastically been lost in many institutions of higher education.
Well, it's the tragedy of low expectations. So you put people in school and pass them along regardless of whether they've mastered the skills at the prior grade level. And there have been numerous efforts going back to George W. Bush's No Child Left Behind, subsequent reforms, all kinds of state reforms, and no shortage of spending. So lots of spending have gone into these programs, but we're graduating students today who are worse at math than students that were graduating in the 40s and 50s in the United States. So what we've been doing hasn't been working. We should look back at the fundamentals and get those things right. And frankly, why isn't it right? Well, what's crowded it out is a lot of other agenda, training, social training people what to think and believe and feel about their friends and neighbors, instead of how to be educated so that people can think for themselves and draw their own conclusions. And I suspect that the Biden administration isn't a fan of the latter.
There's an opportunity cost, right? That every minute a child spends learning something like critical race theory or something like, social issues that really ought to be the parents' responsibility. That's a minute they're not spending on reading, writing, arithmetic.
Right. Or just accurate history. I mean, there's no question critical race theory builds on the fact that history has been shortchanged in a lot of ways, but of course, it takes that little grain of truth and distorts it in other ways. So, there has been a longstanding agenda with education. And I think we have to return to the agenda needs to produce educated young men and women. And it used to be by the time you graduated high school, we were offering people that could master Greek and Latin and, multiple levels of calculus by high school graduation. And today we're doing well to see them read at grade level. That's and a horrible graduation rate in many communities and schools. And I think that's why, the solution looks more and more towards school choice.
All about getting those priorities straight and putting parents in the driver's seat. Well, there you have it. Congressman Warren Davidson, thank you for answering 5 big questions.
Thanks for asking them, and good luck with the rest of it.